Hi, welcome to Make Your Movie, a series about filmmaking for filmmakers by filmmakers, brought to you by the Alamo Film Group. Today's guest is Colin Bressler. I'm your host, Art Kurland. Not to be confused with Al Pacino's character, Art Kurland, in the movie And Justice for All. Although I probably could have pulled that off. You're out of order.
Yeah.
You're out of order. This whole trial is out of order. They're out of order.
Yeah, they are.
How's that?
I liked it. Yeah.
And if it's not
I would
good,
say during take two, let's amp it up a little. You're like a little more angry. You're ready to strangle the judge.
well, that's the beauty of editing. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
If it's no good, nobody's going to see this.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah. Let me tell the audience here a little bit about Colin Bressler. He's a filmmaker, graduate of the School of Visual Arts in New York. He's currently director of operations for Odin Films and has an extensive resume in filmmaking. Producer, director, cinematographer in movies and television. So welcome, Colin. And so before we get started, since I hold the cards literally, and I reserve the right to fling them, by the way.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah. From New York to Texas, what's your story? How did you come to Texas, and particularly San Antonio?
So I met a long time ago. I met a Texas girl. So that's pretty much the story. I lived for about 6 months when I was a little kid in Houston, so I had a slight tie to Texas, but that was it. And I met a wonderful, amazing Texas gal studying in grad school in New Jersey, and fell in love with her. And she brought me down, not to move, but we came down to hang out and meet her family and everything. And I loved it. I loved the weather. I loved the culture. I loved pretty much everything, actually. And we both were kind of like, well, should we go to Austin? She went to UT in Austin, so she loved Austin. So it was like Austin or San Antonio, and it was like, I kind of felt San Antonio was kind of a better home feel. It felt more homey, more, tangible in that way. So the rest is history.
Nice. I'm from New York, as a matter of fact, and my story is exactly like yours.
Oh, yeah. I figured as much in terms of that's probably pretty common.
Yeah. So, Colin, let me ask you, what made you want to be a filmmaker?
So, growing up, my parents are cinephiles, all the way to the extent that over my dinner table growing up, literally, movie lines would fly all the time, and you'd have to kind of know what the movie line is. Sometimes you'd have to follow the next line in the movie. My father and my mother had a giant, this is the 80s, bear with me, a giant VHS library.
Wow.
So when I was always in tune with it. My uncle, his name's Jeff Mazie, he's also obsessed with movies too. So him and my parents, it's just we were always surrounded. And I would always watch movies growing up, all kinds of crazy stuff. Even as a small kid, I was being exposed to famous films or whatever. And my dad's library was filled with things like The Searchers, 2001: A Space Odyssey, many films. And so we'd watch all these. And then when I went to, I didn't necessarily know I wanted to do film. I knew I loved film. But when I got to high school, my high school had a sort of a video department. So I started messing around with the video department. And I remember one of the assignments was kind of like pick a position in the film industry and like do a write about it. So I wrote about like director of photography, which I didn't even know what that meant back then. And I really thought it was a cool thing. And then, just that love of movies mixed with learning what it was. And I was kind of starting to get faced with that idea of like, where are you going to college? What are you going to do? And so it just kind of hit me. I was like, wait, I think I've always wanted to make movies. And also my friend and I found his dad's camera. He had an 8mm camera. So this was in 8th grade, and we started filming movies on it. Him and I were like obsessed with it. We'd make all our friends do it, and they hated it. And it's not like we were doing that like, oh, we're going to be filmmakers someday. We just did it because it was fun.
Sure.
But I would have to say like that probably was the beginning of where I started going, oh, it's kind of cool making up stories and filming them.
Yeah, very cool. So who are some of your inspirations?
My inspirations are Spike Lee, when I was coming of age, was a big inspiration. I loved Do the Right Thing, and Malcolm X came out my senior year of high school, and that was right around the time I decided I was like, I want to do this. You know, I already had known I was going to film school. I didn't know where yet, and I just remember being blown away. I went to see it like 5 times with friends, and I was just blown away by the movie. Yeah, and Woody Allen. My parents loved Woody Allen, and obviously Stanley Kubrick, which is at this point, everyone would agree with that. It was those. My parents loved Stanley Kubrick, so I was exposed to like Doctor Strangelove way too early in life. In 2001, I remember watching that when I was like 9 and going, "What is happening? I hate this movie." Now I love it, but so I'd say those. I mean, now more contemporary. I love like Paul Thomas Anderson, Wes Anderson. Anyone named Anderson, I guess.
Yeah. It's funny how our tastes change as we get older, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of the contemporary, I mean, there's a lot of great stuff going on, but it's a little less auteur. So I find it harder to kind of latch onto one filmmaker anymore, where it is, when a P.T. Anderson movie's coming out, but I couldn't tell you some of the films I watched I thought were brilliant, but I don't know the filmmaker's filmography. Uh-huh. Although Denis Villeneuve.
Sounds about right.
Villeneuve with Dune.
Sounds better.
He's amazing. Like, he's brilliant. So those are some of them.
Cool. So how did you start off? After school.
After school? Oh, so in school, I have to rewind that. Is that in school? My freshman year, I was like one of the really annoying go-getter kids, and so I had the School of Visual Arts in New York mixes their classes, so sometimes a freshman will be with a senior.
Okay.
So we have to take acting, which I did not want to take. I never thought I would act in my life. So in the acting class, there was a senior, and I went up to him. This is like 10 days into school, by the way. I'm like 18. And I go, how do I do this? Like, what do you're a veteran, like, what do I do? And he's like, get on every film you can. And there was a bulletin board, and people would put their movies on there. Much like now, it would be online, but there it was back then. This is in 1994. So you go and you call the guy on a payphone, and you call, hey, I want to be I want to work on your movie. And so I just started working on every movie that I did. I did a lot of SVA, but actually I did a lot of NYU movies for some reason. They would post in our bulletin board as well. So I actually found myself doing more NYU movies than my own school's movies. And I met a bunch of awesome people. One of the DPs on one of the first movies, like I said, I was still a freshman. He taught me how to focus pull, and he liked how I did it enough that he started bringing me on all of his movies. And I worked with him all the way up until, 15 years ago or so. But I did like all of his films. Now he's a big director in Hollywood, but back then he was a cinematographer. But and I just sort of like, it really, honestly, I PA'd, I did everything under the sun, but I always stayed near the camera. I was always interested in the cameras. I was always focused on learning from the cinematographer, the assistants. Oh, what's that lens?
Right.
What are you guys doing? Why'd you put that in? I mean, annoyingly so. I'm sure a lot of them were like, okay, kid, move away, go away.
So, I found that people like teaching people, and they like talking about their equipment and how to do certain things. So I wouldn't worry
100%.
about you being a nuisance. I'm sure in their own way they probably appreciate.
Well, my freshman year summer, I was an intern on a movie about Elvis. So,
cool.
and my cinematography instructor, I asked him, I said, I'm going to do this movie this summer. I'm not going to be around you. So what should I do? And he said, bring a notepad that can fit in your pocket and a pen. And he goes, just ask people questions and write it down.
Exactly.
And I did just that. And 2 weeks into the shoot, the grip and electric department petitioned the production to put me on their crew. I'm not kidding.
No.
It was hilarious. And the producers were like, no, we have him doing other stuff. Like, we can't. And they got all upset and it became this thing. And I was like, guys, like, please, I don't want to be a problem. I just want to work.
Yeah.
But it was just, because of that notepad. And they were like, man, you're really into this. Like, it's cool to see somebody that interested. And it was literally like, what's the stand? What is that thing? That big metal thing? And the guy would explain it to me. I'd write it down.
Yeah.
It's so nerdy.
That's nice when they're pulling.
Because I was the driver. My first job on a real movie, I was the driver. I was driving the actors from New York City to Woodstock, New York, every day, wow. Back and forth. But any minute I was on set, I was like, they're going to tell me to drive somewhere, so tell me more about like what that piece of equipment is. I think they just saw that they're like, this guy hasn't slept. He's been driving. I mean, I didn't slept maybe 2 hours a day. And they were like, look at this guy, you know, like, all right, we'll give it to him. So
either that or they were really nervous over that.
Yeah, they were creeped out. Yeah, that's true. They're probably like, get this guy away from us. Put him in a car and have him drive back and forth. Yeah. It's not the worst idea.
So in your projects, you've been involved with all different stages of filmmaking, you know, writing, the directing, production, post-production. Are you partial to any one aspect of the process?
Yeah, I would say cinematography and lighting. I would say that's kind of my favorite thing. You know, framing a shot, devising a shot, then executing it through lighting too. You know, those variables. You know, I think that's what always. Once I learned what film was, when I was a kid, I didn't know, you know, but once I understood all the jobs and what they were, that was the one that always drew me to it. It's just that I love storytelling, and so I started to direct because I felt as though I wanted to tell this certain stories, and as a cinematographer, I'm not able to do that. I'm telling somebody else's, so it became kind of like I just really felt the urge to be like, I want to tell these stories that are like living in my mind, and nobody else is going to do it, so I might as well just do it, you know. But yeah, I'd say, I mean, when I make my own films, I shoot them myself, not because I'm better than anyone, not because I can't find someone better than me, because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there. It's just because I don't want to give away a piece of the pie that I love so much. I'm glad to give away editing. I'm glad to give away production design. I'm glad, you know, those things, but I love the shooting process. I love having a camera on my shoulder. I love that tactile experience. So that's the one area that like I don't see ever like not doing, you know, on any level.
I never understood when I saw like these award shows and stuff why people got awards for like lighting and stuff like that until I went behind the scene and saw that it's there's an art definitely to all of that, the lighting and everything. Yeah.
Well, the cinematography awards usually given during the commercial break. Sometimes they're even like pushing the guy up. They're like, "Who's the best cinematographer?" Roger Deakins, and he goes up there and they're like, he says his name, he says thank you, and there's like music starts playing and they push him off the stage. It's like, okay. I always got so offended because I always was like, why don't the directors stick up for the editor and the cinematographers? Because it's like those two people are making these movies, and we all know that. Anyone around the project, the feel of it, it's like an actor on a film set. They watch and they see, oh, that guy over there is doing a million things all day, and that guy, and then they see these things come together, and they go, how did the editor even make something out of that scene? Right. I thought I did a terrible job. So, you know, it always makes me sad when I don't really watch the Academy Awards anymore for that reason, because I always felt that I was like, obviously acting is insanely important. But I was like, filmmaking is collaboration. It's like such an utter collaboration. So, you know, I was like, the music, I mean, the composer, I mean, so, you know.
It's a thankless job, but the cinematographer.
Well, it isn't in that, and any cinematographer will tell you, including these guys, is that, like, when a shot comes together, it's like magic. Yeah. You know, and when everything flows, it's a weird feeling. I don't know. The only thing that maybe it's akin to like when you hear basketball or someone talk about like being in the zone and making 18 3-pointers in a row or something. There's a magical feeling when it all works.
Agreed.
Because most of the time it doesn't, and you're really annoyed. You know, so you live in this annoyed world where you're like, man, the sun's not doing what I want it to do, or it's cloudy and I want it to be sunny, or whatever. Yeah. Most of the time you're frustrated, but in that one occurrence where like things come together, you're just like, yeah, there it is.
So what would you say is the most difficult process when you're making a film?
So I would say, like, on my films, I'll slice it into two. On my films, I work at what I would literally call no-budget filmmaking. So the most difficult thing is having enough time to film a scene properly. So because you're most of the time you're asking actors to leave their real lives, you know, even if they're just actors, they could be doing a Pepsi commercial, but they're there for you. So, you know, I'm very aware of, I don't like to abuse people's schedules, so I like to tell them we're going to do this shoot for 5 hours, and we're going to do it for 5 hours. Yeah. Maybe go to 6, but I'm not going to have them there for 8. So it's always frustrating because I'm always like, man, I could have done another take, or I could have done another angle of that piece of dialogue. Or I could have put the camera on a tripod or dolly and done a more articulate dolly shot. So it's just something that you get in that post and you're always like, man, I see more possibilities there that I couldn't have gotten to because I'm hamstrung with time because I don't have money.
I think everybody goes through that. I could have done this better. I should have said that, or should have did it this way.
Yeah. As for cinematography or those elements is variables. I think that cinematography is a lot of times uncontrollable unless you're shooting in a studio.
Yeah.
So sometimes you get variables that are really annoying, or they mess up the perfection that you saw in your mind.
Yeah.
So those are the two things I'd say.
So what do you like about filming in this area?
Oh, I love it filming here. Like the looks of things. There's so many. Like you could do like kind of mountainous, hilly terrain, right, in the hill country and get these cool vistas. So I just shot for my newest film. I shot up the street here over over by Welfare. Just vistas, and I show people back north and the east. They'll be like, where were you? Arizona or like New Mexico? Beautiful vistas. Then you could get the grungy urban vibe in downtown or the city, or you come up here into the more suburban areas and get really pretty, beautiful mansion type looks or swimming pools and paradise and things like that. Compared to where I come from, Florida and New York, both of those places offer cool stuff, but it's very limiting. Living in New York City per se, you got to kind of bring a crew and everybody out to get kind of a natural feel to something. If you want to have something in the woods, well, you got to go get it. You got to go find that and go to it. Here, hey guys, I'll meet you in 10 minutes. We're going to go over to Eisenhower Park or something, and we get those shots. And Florida has really just one kind of look. Well, two, I'd say, tropical and kind of flat, boring, basically. So you only get that out of that, and so I just hear like, oh man, I'm also so inspired. I drive around a lot here, and I'm always like, oh, I want to shoot over there. Oh, I want to shoot over there. And I'm just now cracking the surface of like locations, because I've been here for 14 years, but I'm still learning the city, and so I think that I'm trying to learn more locations and find more stuff through people that know it better than me, other film people that know better locations, and I'm starting to find really cool stuff I've never seen before.
Do you find it difficult to like secure a location once you find
No.
one? Okay.
No, that's another thing. Like again, as opposed to New York, particularly, like most people here, store owners, most places, unless it's a giant corporation, but private company places are always super cool. We shot my last film. We shot at a drive-through.
Oh, cool.
At a Mexican restaurant, privately owned Mexican restaurant. And they let us, I drove through the drive-through like 20 takes. We were all over the place, and they were like, yeah, whatever, In New York, they'd be more likely, they'd be like, how much are you going to pay me?
Get out of here.
Or no way, you can't be here. You're going to clog everything, you're going to cause a problem. And that's been the case throughout. I've almost never had a problem, other than if I try to shoot in a mall or at a Target or something, where they're going to be more like, who are you, what are you doing, did you get a permission from corporate? And I always go, no, I'm good, I'm out. I'll find a mom and pop somewhere that'll let me shoot.
Sure. Cool. So is there anything you think that San Antonio needs to do to make it easier for filmmakers?
Yeah, I think that I think ideally there'd be more investment in the filmmakers. There's a lot of really cool talent here. A lot of people doing stuff, but there's not a lot of resources. There's a lot of people doing what I'm doing, which is awesome, but there's only so much you can do with that. Eventually, you graduate and say, okay, now I need a six-figure budget or more, and so I think like more grant programs maybe. I know they have them and they're great, but I think that like access to more money. I've had the idea that what about creating, through the Chamber of Commerce, like a connection between the film world and the business world, so that more people in the business world see the film industry and say, wait, I'm a real estate investor here in San Antonio, but I always loved cinema. I thought it wasn't serious. I think of LA or New York for serious filmmaking. I didn't know that much is going on here. I would love to get involved and help fund some of these things. Oh, the guy only wants $50K? Sure. I thought he was going to want $400 million. There's a lot of misconceptions, because a lot of people don't realize that cinema to make it has gotten cheaper because of these incredible cameras that we have now.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of people in this town, where a lot of us are like, we're scrappy. You know, we figure out how to make resources and make things work.
Sure.
And so we just have to connect a little bit of more resource to people and understand that, like, a lot of people in this town would be happy with 10 grand, you know?
Yeah, that's right.
But I think a lot of people think that when someone like me comes in their office or something looking for investment, they're thinking, you know, I'm doing Game of Thrones or something, or I'm doing some big budget thing, and it's like, no, it's a small investment, but there could be a big return, especially if it's projected right, if it's thought out right.
Yeah, that should be the open, right? Was when you approach an investor, I'm not looking for a lot of money.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot. Well, I think you have to, like, what I try to do is, and I'm not that successful with this clearly, but is try to make them understand that you got to get that out of the way first. You got to get the idea that, and I almost start with the money, like the literally numbers, because I've seen people's faces change and they're like, oh, really? That's it?
Yeah.
And it always blows me away. And I go, oh yeah, no, you thought I was talking about, you know, $800,000 or something.
Right. So, Colin, you had some of your movies distributed on Amazon. Was that a difficult process? And are you looking for other methods of distribution in future projects?
Truth be told, you can. It's harder now. Amazon's made it harder, but you can actually upload your movie to Amazon, and they will accept them to some extent. Although they've made it a little harder, but I've never done that. All the films I've ever released were released through a distributor. My first film I ever did was called Sleepover, and it's like a experimental sort of horror movie and ghost story. And I had submitted it to festivals, all this stuff. I sent, really what I did is I just sent dry screeners out to a bunch of horror film companies. And actually a company out of Texas called Screamtime Films said, they were like, this is actually good, we want this for our catalog. Because most of their movies back then were bloody slasher type movies. And mine was a kind of a Blair Witch style horror, you know, ghost thing. So I was blown away because I never thought anybody would ever want my film at all, you know, any film I ever did. So I was like, oh my God, yeah. And I remember being in like seventh heaven. They took it, so he puts it online. The Screamtime Films, they do it themselves. They do it all. I just signed a contract with them. They take it, and then they do a sort of a consignment pay thing where they give you 60%, they get 40, whatever.
Nice.
So that film went, and then after that, they came to me, Screamtime came to me and said, would you do a film for us? And I was like, yeah. So they said, well, I have 4 ideas. I'm going to send them all to you, and you tell me which one you like the best. Now, I never thought in a million years I would do a slasher. It's just not I love Halloween and some of those movies, but it was a slasher. And I was like, okay, I can work with this. It's kind of about college girls bullying each other online. So I ran with it. They let me write whatever I wanted to do, and I made that. And that one, of course, was through them, so they put that on Amazon.
Okay. And
then this one, Bloody Domestic Hell, went through Monarch Films. It was brought to. I had a film rep named Micah Lyons. He's out of Dallas. He lives in LA now, but he's a Dallas native, and he's a film rep. So he brought it to Cinematica Film Market, and Monarch took it and put it, made it part of their collection. And Remy's Demons went to Screamtime and went back to Amazon. So none of the films I've made to this point I put online, but you can get rejected by Amazon, which wasn't the case before. But I don't know how rare. I don't know if they're hardcore and they don't let any. They only let 20% of the movies go in. That I don't know. But yeah. And then you're back into your question. Yeah, I want to try to expand to new arenas. I know that like this film is on Apple TV. Domestic Hell's on Apple TV. That was super exciting to have like my stuff on like an Apple product.
Sure.
There's what is it? Tubi. Vimeo actually has a streaming. YouTube now has sort of their own streaming content. Obviously the Netflix and Amazon Prime. So yeah, I mean, I'm definitely looking to I'd like to start moving into other streaming platforms and also start to have a little bit more ownership over the movies in the back end.
Well, there's so much more, out there now. You mentioned some of them, the Tubis and the Hulus.
Yeah.
You would think that there would be hungry for content,
I think they are. It's just that the problem. Well, it's not a problem, but the truth is there's so much content. So it's like I think they're desperate for content, but I think that they're inundated with content. So and then like I said, that a lot of it's become very much easier to make a movie. So there's a lot more movies out there,
Gotcha.
like flowing through. So it's coming. One of the things I thought that I think Amazon should do is create a two-tier system for their streaming, because most of the movies like mine get lost. They're just gone. Like they go there and they're part of a collection of a million movies. So my parents, let's say, can't find it unless they know it's mine, right? Yeah. They know where to look, but somebody else just going online that might be excited to that loves indie films. There's a lot of people out there, believe it or not, that are really like, hey, I love like the low budget stuff. Some of them are awesome.
I'm one of them.
They can't find it. You know, it's really hard. So I was hoping that Amazon would create kind of a secondary tier, like a tier for like almost like a Criterion indie slot that they kind of pick and say, these are the indie films we're sort of saying, like, check these out. And then everybody else has an availability that we have to then get people to watch.
That's a good idea.
But without that, even really good, I mean, I've watched movies on Amazon that were probably $1 million movies that were really good, and I was like, I never would have found it. I just searched and searched and searched, and then I was like, what is that? And I watched it, I'm like, that was really good.
Yeah.
But, you know, most people are not going to do that legwork.
Sure.
They're, you know, it's a Friday night, they want to watch a movie with the family, they're not sitting there for 3 hours trying to find some buried movie on it. So I just think that's just an idea I had of like a platform where a big company creates a platform where more filmmakers can get exposure.
Yeah,
you know,
that would be great.
Yeah, something like that. I mean,
so you've definitely done work in horror and thriller genre, and then you recently took a different turn, making a documentary called Sandras Revolution. Can you talk more about that?
So in my career, I've done a lot of shooting docs. I've filmed a lot of documentaries, and so it's always been a passion of mine. I love documentary work, and it was just something I was drawn to or pushed into the industry. And so what happened is I got, you know, my wife. When I met my wife is Nicaraguan, and they fled Nicaragua for because of the revolution in the 80s, early 80s. And so my wife always told me, she was like, oh, I want to write a book about my mother and having to come to this country. She didn't know English, like, and build a life here. So I was always like, yeah, you should. You know, that'd be amazing. Then she was like a graphic novel. But then she's like, wait, my husband films. Why don't we make a film? You know, I was like, oh, yeah, cool. That'd be awesome. So we just kind of decided, we're like, why don't we just slow burn this? And we just started interviewing her mother, and next thing came to the next thing, and then eventually we decided to go to Nicaragua, and I brought my camera and we filmed everything, and it's turned into 2 movies actually. Sandras Revolution, which is available on Amazon Prime today, and Sandras Return, which is coming out soon.
Nice.
That's the sequel. Not many documentaries have sequels. I make a joke because I'm like, the last one should be Sandra's Revenge, and she gets all ripped and she goes back and fights like a civil war or something. But yeah, it was really that kind of haphazardly, like, it was more my wife. I didn't, you know, I never was like, oh, I'm going to make my own doc. That wasn't on my mind, because I filmed them for other people, and it wasn't, my mind didn't think that way. I wasn't like, oh, I have a doc concept I want to do. Now I feel a little differently, having done them, and I really loved making our own. And I co-directed those with my wife. And so, you know, she did the interviewing, and she did all the data collection, and she helped like mold the story. I focused more on the cinematography and the look and all that kind of stuff, and then editing, I worked with the structure and building it out, because she's not a filmmaker, she's a sociologist. But so it's like our two brains came together and created that kind of film. But I never would have made a documentary without her.
And how was Sandra's experience with it? Is she now looking to do more?
If Sandra were here, she would have pushed me out of the shot. She loves the camera. The camera loves her. Like, yeah. She has enjoyed every second of this. We got her for Sandras Revolution. We got her on Ken's 5. She was on the morning show, and they interviewed her about it. She was like in seventh heaven. And so the second movie is just about her going back to Nicaragua after 30 years, Sandras Return, and it's basically returning to her roots and what happens. And there's some twists and turns, and there's actually some drama there. And but again, we didn't even know we were making it. We thought we were making only Sandras Revolution. And I just filmed everything.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until the pandemic happened, I had nothing. My job, I had no jobs. So I sat around and one day I went through all my hard drives, kind of like a stack of hard drives. And I found the footage and I said, this could be a movie, because we never used it. So Daniel Balmer, he's an Our Lady of the Lake, was an Our Lady of the Lake student. He's a Spanish speaker. He's from Mexico. And I called him, I said, would you edit a feature-length documentary with like 1 billion hours of footage? And he's like, yeah. So he did an amazing job, and that's the new one that, like, right now it's at a market with Michael Lyons, the rep, and he's repping it and trying to get distribution.
So if budget and resources weren't an issue, what would be your perfect film to make?
Right now, Daniel, who I mentioned a moment ago, who edited Sandra's Return, him and I are writing a script called New Jerusalem, and it's kind of like a Matrix meets The Truman Show meets something, I don't know. But it's very like sci-fi. So the only reason I bring that up is that movie, it would be awesome if we could take it to its fullest.
Sure.
Right now, everyone who writes to me hates me because I'm always like, we can't afford to do that. Write that out. And they're always like, Josh Kaza, I wrote Remy's Demons with. He hates me because I'm always like, Josh, can't afford that. Get rid of it. You know, he's like, dude, it's not that expensive. Get rid of it. I'm not filming that. I can't afford that. Whatever. You know, like you have them on horseback. I can't find a horse. I'm not doing it. So
in Texas?
Yeah, that's a bad example. But you know what I mean, like but just like it's so hard because like, we're dreamers. People like we the filmmakers, actor, like we're all dreamers, and you want to dream, and you want to dream big, and you want to. And I come from a world of like some of my favorite stuff is fantasy, like Star Wars, and I love some of the Marvel stuff. Like I would love to make stuff like that, but right now I'm kind of like, because of what I have, I really, and it's been so fun because like I hamstring myself, but it makes me learn and it makes me better, and I have to like figure it out on the fly. I mean, I've gone to sets with a set of things and the actor doesn't show up, so I've got to figure out a new way to shoot this scene without the actor, stuff like that has happened. It's super cool, but yeah, I mean, that movie would be great. We're going to try to fundraise and everything, but like ideally for that film, yeah, it would be $100 million movie with big actors, and we'd have great special effects, but mostly great sets we'd be able to create, because it's about a virtual world. It'd be cool to make like a really cool location, a place that would fit everything, because everything should look almost like perfect,
Yes.
So that movie, I mean, I think I'm doing that movie. I always fantasize about like what I would do with like certain characters. Like I have a fantasy about a Batman film I would make if I could make one, things like that. Yeah. Like I always fantasize about that. I'm sure everyone does. Just things like that. There's certain comic books I've read over the years. I'm like, that would be a great movie. Yeah. So something like that.
That's great.
Yeah, thank you.
So what's the biggest lesson you've learned being a filmmaker?
I would say organization. I think that the more organized you are in both preparedness and mentally. So, like, if you're going into shoot a scene, whatever the scene is, if you go into that scene and you're just kind of like, well, we'll wing it, we'll figure it out, you might hit on masterful, like, and it happens. It's very, remember the movie In Cold Blood?
Uh-huh.
So in that, remember this famous raindrop scene? Well, that just happened. It wasn't meant to happen, right? So that happens, right? Magic happens. But I believe like that happens when you kind of get past all the BS in the middle. So like if you get to that scene and you're ultra prepared and you've thought about it 1,000 times, you're going to stumble on some new thing now because you're already past all that. You've had all the shots in your mind. You know the wardrobe. You know what they're drinking, what they're eating, and this, whatever it is. Now you can get past it, and you're going to notice something that you didn't notice before, and you'll find that little magic. Or an accident will happen, and you'll be ready for it because you'll go, oh, I didn't think that was going to happen, but you know what? That's better. Let's go with that. And so I'd say preparedness, like I said, mentally, like really get yourself in a relaxed environment, and so you can think as clearly as possible, and then pre-production, like prepare yourself for that day? What kind of lighting are they going to be doing? How do you want to project to the actors? What kind of performances are you looking for in that specific scene? And also knowing the big picture, being organized enough to know what that scene, because we shoot out of order, how that scene fits into the greater narrative. So you're not just like directing for one scene and then realize, oh wait, I just created a really unbalanced performance because I was telling this actor 16 different things each time we film. So it's just really preparedness is everything.
Well, I think they call that luck, when preparedness and opportunity meet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is. Totally is.
Is there any advice you'd like to give for up-and-coming filmmakers?
Yeah, I mean, I think that don't be in a rush. Don't be in a rush. Like, take your time, learn everything. Try to learn what sound guy's doing, what the lighting guy's doing, what the camera guy's doing. Learn the post-production thing. I'm assuming you're talking about like someone who wants to direct and write, let's say their own movies. Learn everything everyone's doing, so that one, you can know what's happening around you, and you're not going, I think he's doing everything right. You're in charge, and everyone on that set needs to know your vision. And if you don't know how to communicate that to them, then they might fail for you, and it won't be their fault actually, right? And so it's really about, if you're young right now, I would say take your time, learn. I was an AC for a really long time. I shot movies on the side, mostly for either no money or like very little money. But I was making my money surviving as an AC, but I was always learning from everyone I was working with. And then slowly what happens is you start to get, every now and again, someone throws you a bone and you start to become the DP. And then eventually you go, wait, I'm only DPing. And I think that there's nothing wrong with that. I think that we're kind of the society we live in now is in this fast, it's almost like we're on a fast forward button on the remote. And I'm like, there's no reason. This industry is all about like taking the long journey. Because it never happens fast for anyone. It's always a long journey. There's pitfalls, there's mistakes. Yeah. So I would just say, just be really patient, learn everything you can, eat it up, and also be open. Be open to new things, because you might end up falling in love and becoming the greatest focus puller we've ever seen in the history of cinema. And then all of a sudden you make six figures and you have a great life and you're happy every day and you have fun and you do a great job. So just be open. Open and open-minded is a massive thing, and patient.
That's great advice. Yeah.
Thank you. Wow.
And learn from your mistakes.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Which you're going to make a million.
That's right.
You only learn from your mistakes, I would say.
Yeah, that's the best lessons to learn.
Because your triumphs, you're like, yeah, I'm awesome, right? and like that happens to me. Like I do something well and I'm like super stoked about it, but then when things miss, it's like I get stoked about good things for like a minute, but I harp on the bad things for the rest of my life. So it's like that's why they matter, because I'm sitting there going like, how do I do that better? How do I do this story better? How do I direct that better? How do I find more time better? You know what I mean? Like you just keep pushing.
Mm-hmm. Very good. So these a couple of questions that I was curious about. When you go to the movies on your own, on date night, do you find yourself critiquing the movie and or admiring the work that was done?
Oh yeah, yes, absolutely. I only critique. I try really hard, because I used to be. When I went to film school, and then I would say for the first like 5 to 6 years after, I wasn't enjoying movies anymore. I was just like staring at them through one lens, and it kind of sucked, because I love movies, and I was like, I can't stop seeing the camera movement, or I can't stop looking at the lighting or something. And as I got older, I started saying to myself, you know what, like, let's get back to being a movie fan. So I really only I try really hard to be, especially if someone gives me a movie, if somebody's like, hey, check out my movie, what do you think? I don't really come at it through the criticism of like, I don't go like into the minutia. Well, your shot selection's not so great. I tend to kind of give them a moviegoer perspective. I just say like, I liked it. I didn't really connect with your story, but in some of the performances, I wasn't connecting with the character, but overall it was okay. Like something like that. But yeah, if I'm watching a Hollywood movie or whatever, like a movie in the theater, nowadays I'm pretty good at kind of shutting that off to an extent. If it's something that like Dune was for me, If it's mind-blowing or like I'm really blown away by the artistry of it, yeah, I'll notice and I'll be like, wow, that's incredible. You know, like just the simple idea of doing that is brilliant or whatever. But yeah, I try to just enjoy movies as much as I can now because I've always loved them. You know, I try not to overly scrutinize, but I still, it's like two brains. I'm still able to do almost both at the same time. I'm able to kind of be like, yeah, that was pretty bad, or you know, but I still like it. Yeah. You know, like it's pretty cheesy, but whatever. It's still a good movie.
I'm usually like, why did they end it like that?
Yeah, yeah. You know? Which is always the hardest.
Yeah.
That's always like, I'm like, oh, how do you end this story?
Right.
Yeah.
And then also, I was curious about, and you mentioned earlier about when we were talking about awards, and you mentioned the music. And there are some memorable music moments in movies. You know, if you think about the Jaws, when the shark's about to attack.
Yeah.
So, how do you know when it's right when you're looking for music scores?
For me, it's utter instinct and gut. That's for me, my process. I have to sample a lot of music. I usually, so most of my films were scored by a guy named Colin Chinchar, another Colin, he's out of Oregon now. We met in New York, but he lives in Oregon now. So what he does is he'll just send me samples, 1 minute, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, and he'll just throw everything but the kitchen sink at me, you know, and I'll be like, I love that strings piece is great. But can you make it a little darker, add a little more bass to it or something? I'm not a musician, so like I don't know how to speak their language, but I know the feel, and I'll just tell him feel. Sometimes I'll send him samples. You know, I'll be like, oh, I saw this movie, check this out. I want something like this, and then he'll interpret it for him. But he's also, between him and I work together so much that I trust his instincts. Sometimes I haven't always loved it at first, and then the more I've watched a movie, the more I watch the edit, I start to fall, more in love. I go, oh yeah, no, this is great. But it's very instinctual because I'm not a music person. So it's like a lot for me is I watch it and I feel it. And I'm like, this is close, but I'm not feeling the scene out where I want to feel it. So I kind of like, I live in it and I'll watch it a few times and I'll just be like, I know what I want to feel from the scene, and if I'm not feeling it, then it's generally probably the music. It could be the edit, and then obviously it could be the cinematography and other things. But it's knowing that kind of like exactly the feeling you're looking for from it, and if you get that from music, because music is to me, music's the heart of like cinema. Yeah. It's such a funny thing because I know musicians and I know art, people who do albums and all this, and it's like, when you're doing music, you're in a temporal art form and you're living in this sound, and we're living in like video meets the image meets the sound meets dialogue meets natural sound, cars driving by, whatever. All those things go together, but the music really just wraps it all together in a bow.
Agree.
Because even a great editor will say, they'll be like, yeah, I mean, I'm nothing without the pacing of that. Whatever the music is, I'm nothing without finding a rhythm with that music to my edit and to my cut.
Very good. So what's next for you?
So right now, my wife and I are trying to find distribution for Sandras Return, the documentary we spoke about earlier. I just wrapped production on a film I did with Stride Studios here in San Antonio called No Promised Land, starring Destiny Soria. She's incredible. John Hall is also in it. He's a very influential San Antonio filmmaker, and I'm blanking on others. Roman Garcia was in it. So basically, and Eric Garcia's is his grandson. He's our 3-year-old superstar. He's our 3-year-old diva. So we just wrapped production on that. That's in the can, done, and now basically we're in post. I mean, we're in a post-production. We're going to start hammering it out, trying to find music. I don't have any music right now, so that's the big thing for me. So that film will be probably, we're going to do a big screening in San Antonio. I'm sure I'll invite all you guys and let you know. That'll be probably in March, April-ish, depending on when all this stuff comes together. And then finally, I have a New Jerusalem with Daniel Baumer and I are, we're writing, still fine-tuning that, and we're going to want to film that in San Antonio. for a bit of a bigger budget than what I'm doing here. And I've got a couple of scripts and book stuff that we're working on, trying to get going in the works as well. So we're trying to do a lot of different stuff. Always trying to make something new, tell a new story. Quite frankly.
Well, looking forward to both of those,
Thank
of those
you.
things. Yeah. So before we went on, you were telling me that you're involved with something called Film Connection. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so Film Connection's a film school out of LA, and basically what they do is they find people like me, industry people, and they create, part of the program is the student goes into it and then they get a mentor. They also get like tutors, and there's a whole coursework, but in addition to that they get a mentor. So I was lucky enough to become a mentor in their program. So right now I have 3 students in San Antonio. They're all sort of, well, one is kind of more focused on directing, the other 2 are cinematography. So basically, like, I mentor them. I just try to help them learn about the industry. I try to give them advice on what to do, and my goal is to get them prepared for the industry so they can work. I want them to walk away with the knowledge to AC on a production, or key grip, or hold the boom, or whatever, like, so they can start working and get their feet wet. And maybe they won't be a cinematographer day one, but eventually they will. But like, I want to give them the tools. It's really cool, and it's been really cool to see the younger filmmakers starting out, like what their point of view is, because I get to have access. I talk to them and I get to have access to what's going on with them, and it's really cool to see them, what they're interested in, what the industry's like, what their perspective of the industry's like, and what's turning them on about it. And it's different, very different than when I was 20. So it's cool.
How would somebody get involved with that if they were interested?
Oh, the Film Connection. This is like free plug, I guess. But they basically, you just go to their website, filmconnection.com. I'm not sure, but I know it's just Film Connection something. I think .org maybe, but yeah, or .edu. But yeah, it's just there's others, but yeah, if they live in San Antonio and they see this and they want to, there's other mentors too. There's other guys and women in the city that do mentor, that own production company. They're basically looking for people like these guys, like people like behind that film stuff and know the cameras. And then what happens? The student gets paired with them, and they go. My big thing is I bring them on shoots with me, my professional shoots. I bring them out with me, and they'll intern and they'll watch and they'll put up a light for me or move the camera over there, and I try to give them hands-on. I'll be like, hey, Greg, like on my movie, one of my students was on set. He wants to be a cinematographer. I did a lot of gimbal work, so I gave it to him a couple times. I said, here, go mess with it. Go make a shot. Let me see what you got, Same thing, I'd give them my handheld camera at times. So, just like getting them to learn. I think we're the future of cinema. The Southwest, particularly San Antonio, Austin, all the way to Arizona. I think that with the climate, and then I think Hollywood is becoming it's growing well past LA's borders just because of the internet and streaming services and all this. I think it's only going to get bigger and bigger, and I think that because of our population, because of the artistic fervor of this city, I think this city's one of the future hubs of like cinema, and not just like independent. I'm talking about like Hollywood stuff. There'll be studios, there'll be Netflix presence, things like that here in the future. It's just going to take time and building and all that.
Very good. Well, Colin, I want to thank you for taking your time.
No, thank you.
To
thank
do
you
this
so much.
interview with us, and if you like what you saw, please subscribe to Alamo Film Group YouTube channel. I want to thank the Lion and the Rose for giving us the space today out here in the Rim. A beautiful afternoon, and I look forward to seeing some of your work in the near future, and I hope people look you up and see what you've done. Sounds great.
Please do. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad we had this time together. Yeah.
We should. It should be like where you and I break into like a whole. We start singing and dancing.
Right.
It's like I didn't see that coming.